Agenda for today's 1 hour session is basically to look into the CISA exam structure, which I'm sure most of you are already aware of. Main agenda is to understand the CISA questions and to look into the best practices on how to attempt and qualify. So, after a brief introduction about CISA exam structure, we would take few practice questions, and I would like to run you through those questions. One word of request or advice, as I may say, is that this webinar is not about testing anybody's knowledge. So, whatever practice questions are there, you can answer them for yourself and wait for the next slide wherein we'll be discussing what is the right answer and why it is the right answer. So to start with, I will briefly introduce myself. My name is Rajesh Sandhi. Today, I have almost 30 plus years of total experience. Started my career way back in the year 1990. I have been involved into national security, critical infrastructure management, and data center operations. During this journey of 30 years, the domains in which I have worked and gained some experience and some knowledge and some skills include information security, business continuity, data center operations, and energy management. For me, learning has been a continuous journey. So, along with my corporate career, I have been very keen in developing my skills and the knowledge. And today, because of that, I'm a certified CISA, certified data center professional, certified data center specialist, certified data center facilities operations manager. I'm also a certified lead auditor in ISMS, BCMS, energy management system, quality management system, and facilities management system. My current engagement for the last 6 years is into trainings, auditing, and implementation of management systems. Prior to this, I have served Government of India for more than a decade. I work with the one of the top three facilities management organizations across the globe, CBRA. I have worked with Airtel, which later on became Nextra Data. And I have also worked with a startup by the name Grey Orange, which was into production of robotics and robotic solutions. So to start with, currently the CISA Review Manual 27th edition is the current edition. ISACA is a body which is there for last more than 50 years. ISACA stands for our Information Systems Audit and Control Association. It is a body comprising of professionals whose main job is to look into developing the information system security related domains and training courses and certifications. So CISA examination today is happens to be one of the most sought after certification for career development. The manual is divided into 5 domains. The first domain is on the information system auditing process. That means how does one undertake the auditing of the information systems. Second domain is dedicated to governance and management of IT because information systems predominantly are covering the IT infrastructure. So governance and management of IT so that the IT function enables the organizations to meet their own objectives. So that part is being covered here. Then there's a domain on information systems acquisition, development, and implementation. So it becomes part of the IT management only. But now organizations may develop their own systems, they may acquire from the third parties. In either the cases, they have to implement the system so that these systems now support the organization in its business activities and the processes. Domain 4 is dedicated to information systems operations and business resilience. That means it is dedicated to how an organization can develop business resilience through developing proper business continuity planning, having disaster recovery planning in place, and having the assurance that in case of a disaster, the organization is ready to face that. And the final domain is on the protection of information assets to ensure that all the three parameters of information security, confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information assets are being protected from the available threats and the vulnerabilities into the system. And this is where the concept of the risk assessment comes into picture. Okay? So in your exam, these domains have been given certain weightages. The distribution of the questions would be 21% for domain 1, 17% for domain 2, that is governance and management of IT, 12% for domain 3, information systems acquisition, development and implementation, 23% is information systems operations and business resilience, and 27% for protection of information assets. So what it means is the total questions which will be given in your CISA exam will be comprising of all the 5 domains, and the number of questions per domains would be roughly matching these percentages. Your examination, when you decide to take, it's a total 4 hours duration of the examination, in which you have to attempt 150 multiple choice questions. Each question will have only one correct answer. The exam is always proctor controlled, whether you take it from the comfort of your office or home, or you go to an examination center. In all the 3 situations, it will be an online proctor controlled examination. These 4 hours are actually enough to attempt 100% questions. So please do not get worried about not having the ability to attempt all. In fact, the time is good enough. Even if you do not know any answer, please make an attempt. Do a guesswork. These questions are designed to assess your practical approach as an information systems auditor. So while attempting these questions, you need to develop that mindset that what will an auditor do in this situation? What is given in the question statement? These 150 questions do not carry equal marks. Rather, they carry certain weightages, and that weightage per question is not shared by ISACA with anyone. Only the ISACA and the governing body knows about it. So when they calculate the score, they consider only the correct answers, that whatever answers are correct, only those answers are considered, and along with their weightages, the marks are being calculated. So it is a scale of about 200 to 800 on which your marking would be done. So that means your score could be anywhere between 200 to 800. And the scale score of 450 is your qualifying score. So everybody who scores 450 and above becomes qualified in the CISA examination, but qualifying the examination does not make us a CISA by default. It is step 1 of becoming a CISA. Once you have qualified your exam, next step is to go to ISACA website and formally submit your application. to be enrolled as a certified information systems auditor. The process of the application is given on the website. So we will not discuss that in this webinar because this webinar is more on practice questions. So to understand the CISA questions, let's start with a very simple question as a sample. Read the question on your slide. An organization performs a daily backup of critical data and software files and stores the backup tapes at an offsite location. The backup tapes are used to restore the files in case of a disruption. Detective control. I have muted everyone. If anybody needs to speak, please unmute yourself. But for the time being, I have muted everyone so that there is no disturbance from the background. Okay. So as I'm saying, do not attempt this question as of now. You need to read the statement, you need to read the option, you need to evaluate each option and then choose your best suitable option. So to help you on this particular question, let us understand what are these controls. Preventive controls are those controls which avert problems before they arise. A management control is a control which will be modifying the processing systems to minimize a repeat occurrence of the problem. A corrective control is a control which will help to correct or minimize the impact of a problem. And the detective control will be the one which will help to detect and report problems as and when the problems occur. Now, if you go with this understanding, with this definition, what do you realize is that a preventive control, because it is there to prevent the problems. So backup tapes can definitely not be used as a preventive control because having a backup cannot prevent the incident of damage to our files. So backup tapes cannot be classified as a preventive control. Now, management control, as we discussed, it is for processing the systems to minimize a repeat occurrence of the problem. Now, taking a backup definitely does not lead to any kind of modification in the processing system. So, management control also does not fit the definition here. Corrective control is a control which helps to correct or minimize the impact of a problem. So backup tapes can be used for restoring the files in case of the damage of the files, thereby reducing the impact of a disruption scenario. And detective controls will help to detect and report the problems as they occur. Backup tapes do not aid in kind of detecting any errors. So now that you have evaluated all these options, so as I said in the very beginning, today's webinar is not about judging your capability to identify the right answer. Today's webinar is rather aimed at enabling you to identify the right answer. So you can do a self-assessment that how this small exercise of paying attention to the question, reading it, understanding, evaluating it has helped you. Usually people are under the impression that 4 hours they would not be able to do justice with the exam. These are 150 questions to be attempted after all. Don't worry about that. Give enough time to each question. So correct answer, as you have now been able to identify, is C only. So now let us look at the best practice to answer the CISA questions. Read the question statement word by word. As I keep on repeating in all my sessions, human mind actually plays games with us. It does not let us read anything word by word. Rather, human mind picks up some words, tries to make a connection, and give us an interpretation. In day-to-day routine life, it works for us. We don't have to pay attention to each word as long as we understand the intent. But right now, we are talking about your examination, which is the first step to your certification. So, here, please read the question statement word by word. Once you have read it, please read again. Do not stop at the question statement. Read each of the options also again word by word. Now, when you start developing this habit, what will happen? You would be in a position to identify certain keywords. So, identify some keywords in the question statement and most of the cases in the options as well. Now, with these keywords, you will be in a position to link your option with those keywords, and you will be able to identify if there are any of the options, maybe one, two, or maybe three options, which can be eliminated, which are not showing any kind of linkage to the question. So in that case, the fourth option becomes your default answer, and that would be the correct answer. So now you are in a much better position to choose the best suitable option, right? Before you identify the A, B, C, or D, try to identify the keywords which I mentioned in my previous slide. Identify the keywords, identify if you can eliminate any of the options, and then you choose the option. Okay, let's look at this question a little bit more detail. What are the keywords, if at all any? First, in the statement, the keyword is data classification. In the option A, the keyword is protective measures. In the option B, the keywords are segregation of duties. Then in the option C, the keywords are security labels. In the option D, the keywords are integrity of information. Now, data classification versus protective measures versus segregation of duties versus security labels versus integrity of information. Look at it. Now read the question again. Which of the following is the main purpose of data classification? That means, why do we do the data classification? What purpose does it solve? So, what can be eliminated? If you will read the options again, you will find that option B, segregation of duties and integrity, can be deleted, eliminated from this particular question. So I'm not saying that integrity of sensitive information is not important. It is a key feature. But sensitive information as such is a classification. That means it has already been done. And for maintaining the integrity of sensitive information, you need other controls. Data classification has already happened. Segregation of duties is a control, right? So now if you look at it again, B and D get eliminated. Now you have to choose between only two options. Data classification's purpose is to apply appropriate protective measures overall or to define the requirements of security labels. So here again, if you now evaluate, defining requirements of security labels would be part of your overall data labeling policy and the data classification policy. So why do we classify data? Why do we classify data between different categories? Because different categories need to be protected with different level of controls. So as such, the correct answer in this question would be A. Second one, you will follow the same practice. Keywords, eliminations, reading word by word, options as well as the statements, reading again. Keywords are dispersed employees, widely dispersed employees. And we are talking about performing a controlled self-assessment which is done by the employees. The keyword in the statement A is top-down and bottoms-up analysis. Keywords in the B are the face-to-face, C is survey, and D is workshop. Now, can we eliminate anything? Of course we can. When we pay attention to the widely dispersed employees as the keyword in the main statement, we can eliminate the options which are not supporting that. So B and D, face-to-face interviews and facilitated workshops, can be straight away eliminated. Now you need to choose between A and C. Now top-down and bottom-up analysis is an activity which is usually related to your financial plannings. It is not linked with the self-assessment control. Now, facilitated workshops can happen through remote, as one of you has posted on the chat box. But then the question is the most time and cost efficient. If you will start organizing the facilitated workshops, then you will be able to address people only in some groups. But when you send a survey questionnaire, you can get much faster responses. So, correct answer in this question is C. So, what have we linked? We have linked what? We have linked the keyword. Sorry, this keyword, widely dispersed employees. This is the situation. And what is the ask? Ask is most time and cost efficient. Now, survey cost is very less. This is not an option. Face-to-face interviews, because people are widely dispersed in different locations, there is an issue with feasibility. Not that it cannot be done, but a lot of time would be required. Workshops, same, time and cost, both would be required. So the easiest way is to throw these survey questionnaires. You will get the responses, and with the help of your tools, you can analyze those responses as well. So keywords, implementation. When you look at this statement, in option A, we are talking about steering committee. B is compliance. C is strategy. D is governance. What can we eliminate? We can eliminate C and D. Implementation projects is the on-ground implementation. Strategy and governance committees have already done their job. They have given the guidelines, what is required, what is best for the business, what is the strategy to be adopted. Now it is the implementation phase. So C and D get eliminated. Choice is between steering and compliance committee. Compliance committee's job is only and only to see the level of compliance. Overall, implementation would be looked by steering committee. So here option A would be the correct answer, and most of you have been able to identify it. Okay, this is a bit longer question. Read it carefully. Give it its due time. There is no hurry, neither today nor in your exam. Significant discrepancies and the data quality, and it's a regulatory body as you identified. And the statement is about what will you recommend to be reviewed first. So it is talking about a priority here. So option A talks about business objectives. B talks about financial statements. C talks about data reported to regulatory body. And D talks about personal information. Now, what can be eliminated? We can eliminate B here because financial statement could not be the only requirement of the regulatory bodies. Correct answer is A. Why? Because B we have eliminated. Data reported to the regulatory body has already happened, in which significant discrepancies were there, and organization is trying to look into what controls can be there. So which kind of data they should review first? There'll be a lot of data. So when we are talking about reviewing the data first, the data set which is to be reviewed first, organization will be identifying that data which is impacting its business objectives. They will start with eliminating the discrepancies from that data. And data with customer personal information is only one of the subsets. It may also impact business objectives. So overall, we will start with the data which is significant for the organization that it can impact its business objective. Let's look at keywords. Keyword is about service level management, and it is talking about most significant finding. That means an audit has happened. All the four are the findings. Out of these findings, which is the most significant one when it comes to the service level management. So option 8 is referring to offshore support. Option B talks about penalties not being defined or missing. Availability measurement is option C. Non-availability of the service desk outside business hours. So what can be eliminated? In this case, maybe nothing, because all the findings are there which will be impacting the service level management. So what do? We look at the maximum impact. Now, having the third party has an offshore support system does not impact the level of the service management, because it is their capability. It does not say that we should always appoint the vendors who have the capability of serving within this particular geographical area, right? Penalties in the service level management are very key factor. Look at the traffic rules. Traffic rule says that whenever I am riding a scooter or bike, I should be wearing a helmet. It is for my own safety. But till the time the government regulations did not impose the penalties for not wearing a helmet, it was not imposed effectively. So in the service level management, in the service level agreements, for every non-conformance, there should be a defined penalty. It becomes a key driver. Right? Yes, it is important how to measure the availability, but that is only one aspect. Service desk support is not available outside the company's business hours. This statement does not tell us that this was one of the requirement. This option would be eligible to be considered only and only if the statement had mentioned so. So in this case, we will go with answer B. When you will study about the service level management, you will find that including the penalties, first of all, what is important is to have a mechanism to review the service level agreements and management on periodic basis. Then identify the areas where there has been cases of non-adherence or violations. And exactly this is the issue. Penalties for missing service levels are very limited, so minuscule that the supplier vendor may not even bother about it. The supplier may happily pay these penalties because these are very minuscule. So if there are less number of penalties, that is the reason of concern. Now, as far as the availability measurement is concerned, it would be decided between both the organizations that what would be the KPIs. Before you, and why would you start measuring the KPIs? Only when you know that you would be penalized for not providing the agreed level of service. So yes, it is required to have the measurement matrix for the availability of the service, but it will come after the penalties. That is where the seriousness will come. So as I said, in this case, you cannot eliminate anything. So in such a scenario, you look at which option has the maximum impact or linkage with the keywords. So keywords, one, the use of spreadsheets. And what is the ask? Best control. That is what the statement is asking about. So option A talks about reasonable checks. Option B talks about validity checks. Option C talks about display back of the project detail after entry. And D talks about reconciliation. So what can be eliminated? We can eliminate B and C. Validity checks to prevent entry of corrected data in spreadsheets is anyways not possible for each and every entry. So display back of the project detail after every entry would be wastage of time, a lot of resource wastage. So B and C gets eliminated. Now between A and B, if you look at reasonableness checks for each cost type versus reconciliation, which control will give you more confidence about having the accuracy being validated? Definitely, reconciliation is a control meant for that very purpose. So, hence, in this option, we will go with option D. Next one, please. Yes, reconciliation will happen only when the amount has been entered, and that is what is said in the previous question. That spreadsheets are being used to calculate the project cost estimates. Entries are being made. All we need to ensure is that there is an accuracy. So you can reconcile of the total amounts given by the project team. The question, Rishabh, was never about preventing anything or detecting anything. It is simple validation. Okay, so keywords. The greatest concern is the keyword here. So, option A, control being implemented by the same person earlier. B talks about a control downgraded when probably he was the data owner or the process owner. Then the current process owner is he has worked with the this person in the past. And option D is the lack of experience of the auditor in a particular technology. So what can be eliminated? Obviously, we can eliminate C and D. Lack of experience in a particular new emerging technology is not detrimental. Once the person takes a new role, he or she can always pick up that skill. So that cannot be a very great concern. If somebody in the current team has been reporting to that person earlier or being part of that team member, does not make any difference. So C and D get eliminated. Now between A and B, when 6 months ago he was the operations manager, he had the right to review the controls and give his comments or take decisions. So he downgraded it. So that cannot be a hindrance to his role as an auditor. But option A, it is a control within the audit scope which he was instrumental in implementing. At that point of time, he would have implemented thinking that that is the best control. Today, he has to audit the same control. So that becomes a greater concern. So option A is the correct option here. Okay, let's have one more for practice. Keyword was not to implement policy and looking at the best course of action in this case. So in the option A, the keyword is about policy for the mobile app, developing and implementing a password policy for the mobile app now. Escalation to the senior management. C is analyzing the risk and impact. D talks about benchmark. So what can be eliminated? We can eliminate B and D. Escalating the non-implementation of policy to senior management does not help much. It would be a part of routine reporting. Benchmarking will also not help. So what is going to help is option C, and thorough analysis of the risk and impact of not implementing the policy. So that is much more important. Escalation of the non-implementation of policy to the senior management would be part of the reporting. And anyways, if you have read about information security, a risk assessment needs to be done at periodic regular intervals and also whenever any significant change happens. In this statement, if you look at the passport policy is already part of organization's information security strategy and one of the business unit. is not ready to adopt this. So definitely organization will have to do a risk analysis. What will happen if it is not adopted? Okay, next one, please.
To help ensure the accuracy and completeness of end-user computing output, it is most important to include strong and control, ensure accuracy and completeness, integrity, and authenticity. Everyone is most important to strong team management controls. Accelerating
Okay, so keywords were about accuracy and completeness. And out of the options given, we are looking at the most strong or most important. So A talks about reconciliation, B talks about change management, C talks about access management, and D talks about documentation control. Question is about accuracy and completeness of end user computing output. So all might be required here. So you can look at the most effective solution which will lead to accuracy and completeness. And as such, that would be reconciliation controls. Change management controls would be required, access management controls would be required, proper documentation controls would be required. But the most important would be your strong reconciliation controls. So keywords is the acceptance of residual risk, not taking any action. So option A talks about reporting the matter to the audit committee, and the keyword here is without notifying the executive management. Keywords in the option B are no further action to be taken. Just accept it as it is. Option C talks about reporting, but having a joint meeting so that both the parties affected are there facing the audit committee and seeking their intervention. Another meeting may or may not resolve the issue. That is the keyword here. So what can be eliminated? We can easily eliminate A and B. We cannot go to the audit committee without notifying the executive management. And there is no point in documenting the audit report stating that no further action is required. So between C and D, scheduling another meeting versus reporting the issue to audit committee in a joint meeting with the executive management for resolution would be the best course of action. So correct answer in this question would be C.
I mean, since it is an internal audit team, why not one more give try with the management team?
The management team has, see, when you are attempting your exam questions, please restrict to the statement that is given. We should refrain from bringing in our own opinions and perceptions.
Okay,
Right?
understood.
So what it is saying is, even after the discussion, there is still disagreement regarding the decision. So disagreement has been established. Now, if you
Okay,
are
okay.
looking at having another meeting, that is fine.
Mm,
But
mm,
when your option C is talking about seeking resolution, so that carries more weight here. I
understood.
hope it's clear now. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, next question, please. So keywords, it's a multinational organization. So that means having presence in multiple regions, and the regional security practices differ. And the question is asking you, what will you evaluate first if you are an IS auditor? So option A is talking about regulatory, local regulatory requirements. B talks about local IT requirements. C talks about cross-border data mobility. D talks about corporate objectives or the corporate objectives related to security. So can we eliminate anything? Maybe not. All considerations are required. But so now you go back to the question. Question is about what to evaluate first. And we all know whatever best practices we may have, whatever international standards we may adopt, when it comes to the regulatory requirements, the regional local regulatory requirements will take precedence over everything. So first one will have to evaluate the local regulatory requirements. If the multinational organization is based out of US and they have a regional office in Sri Lanka, then local regulatory requirements of Sri Lanka will have more compliance requirements or weightage as compared to the requirements in US. So regulatory requirements will always take precedence. Now, in this statement, the very first line, the keyword is mature risk management practices. It is giving us the indication that their risk management is already a mature process. So option A is talking about risk identification workshops. B is talking about implementing risk responses. C talks about assurance. D talks about integrating the risk register. So what can be eliminated? Look at the question again. It is already a mature process. So option A, B, or C by default are already covered. The next step would be integrating the risk register for audit planning purposes because organization is already at a level of maturity. So that means they already have well-defined processes about audit risk identifications, evaluations, implementation of the risk responses, providing assurance regarding the risk. So as you have already identified the keywords, one is the bring your own device, most important for information security. And the another keyword was a large number of exceptions have been granted. So now there is a need to address this situation. So statement A talks about authentication of the devices, update the policy, information security policy is option B, rejecting the new exceptions, and authorization to wipe data. Now, what can you eliminate? You can eliminate C straight away. You have already accepted so many exceptions. Rejecting new exceptions will not help anywhere. Right? Authorization to wipe data on the lost devices would anyways be the part of the policy. But to have this as a policy, the foremost would be to update the information security policy as per the new circumstances and the working environment. So option B would be the correct answer. Introduction of the strong authentication on devices would actually become a part of updated information security policy. Having a requirement of authorization to wipe the data on the lost devices again will become part of the updated information security policy. So the most important thing to be done here would be first looking at the existing information security policy and updating the same. BYOD policy is what we're talking about. And most important factor to be considered while you are formulating this policy. I think, okay, sorry. So the procedure for accessing network, please ignore the right side box here. It's from the previous question only by mistake. So when you look at this question, when you are developing the new BYOD policy, definitely you will have to look into supporting the operating systems because different devices may have different operating systems. Having a restriction on downloading applications, having the capability of remote wide procedures would be there. But the biggest risk comes from accessing the network from unsecured devices. So first and foremost would be to concentrate on procedure for accessing the network.